Okay, so let's get going on Revit top tips. So it's going to take about 45 minutes, this webinar, and I'll try to leave a good amount of time at the end for the Q&A side of it. So we're going to go through a bit of an intro to A2K and to myself. We're going to go through the tips themselves. We've got 11 tips for you if we have time to go through everything, and then time for a Q&A at the end. So A2K Technologies is the company I work for. You might be familiar with them. So we do software training and consulting. So we have 150 staff, which makes us Australia's largest reseller. And so we should have someone local to you. We don't just do Autodesk software. We work with all of the companies shown here. So working with HP, Microsoft and Autodesk means that if you did decide that you needed a one-stop shop, we'd be able to provide you the hardware with Windows on it and Revit ready to go. So as you can see there in this little chart, not just the software and the hardware, we also go into consulting, which is more of my role, and training there, all of the products that we run training on also. So I'm Glenn Sinclair. My role is a technical consultant. I'm based here in Melbourne. My background is an architectural CAD and BIM manager with Woods Bagot. So I was working with them in their Dubai studio, which got up to 280 staff at one stage, and most recently down here in Melbourne with up to 120 staff working in Revit down here. My specialty is large project establishment. So going back to the AutoCAD days and then forward into BIM establishments and project execution plans in Revit now also. So I've worked on many different projects, right down from single residential to the Nikhil Harbour and Tower, I guess was the largest of the projects that I've worked on. And first Revit project was the Cairns Institute there that you can see on screen. So a bit of an organic design, good one for a Revit pilot project, as I can't imagine detailing that up in 2D. But 2D elevations of something like that would not be fun. So great little first project there too. All right, so the tips themselves. So I'm going to be going through, some of these are quite lengthy and in-depth, but I've tried to break it up by throwing in a smaller tip in between, a little sort of 10-second takeaway. And some of them may seem a bit basic. You may already know the tips that I'm giving you, but if you didn't know it, it could be a bit of a eureka moment, and so I've thrown them in there anyway. If you do already know it, good for you. If you don't, this could be a revelation to you. So to start off, who loves this little dialogue? The fantastic save reminder pops up by default every half an hour, and if you have your settings left as default and you're working in a work shared environment with multiple users, you then get the Save to Central reminder shortly afterwards, so you're clicking Save twice there every time. So my first tip is a very small tip, but it's just to get into there, go into your Revit options and change the reminder intervals. So when working in a work shared project, go ahead and leave the Sync to Central reminder on at 30 minutes, but if you put the saved local or save your file reminder higher than that, so up to 1 hour, it's going to just bug you once with one little reminder to save to Central, because as you may know, when you do save to Central, if you leave your settings on default there, this little box is ticked, so it actually does a local file save before and after syncing with the Central. So rather than being annoyed twice, you just get annoyed once with one little dialog box. Again, if you already knew that, great. If you didn't, you'll be thanking me for 5 saved clicks every day. The next little tip, well, slightly bigger tip, I'm going to close out of this file there, is a tool called the Augie Local File Creator. So this is a little tool that I found on the web on a blog called Do You Revit a while ago. The guy there, Dave Baldacchino, has either developed it or found it somewhere. So this little tool is going to enable you to create a one-click shortcut that is going to open the correct version of Revit based on these numbers here. So in this case, Revit Architecture 2014, and perform either an open or an open and specified work sets or an open detached copy in a single click. So if I demonstrate that in action there, it's a one-click shortcut to create a new local of the file and open that. So that can be really handy. Best practice is to be creating a new local rather than just opening your local and synchronizing to central, probably once a week. But no reason you can't be doing that every morning when you come into the office, creating a new local rather than synchronizing your yesterday's local to the central. So there you can see it has done that in one click. So it's a little tool that looks like this. You can download it off his website. I'll show you where in a second. And for the first time to get it set up, you run this little dialog box, which is going to ask you to go and find the central that you're looking to open and what you want to do with it. So if I say go to central, I've got it set up to look at the right spot. It's going to recognize any files in that location with the correct naming scheme, which is just to have the A14 central at the end. If I right click that, I get the options there. So create local as usual, create local and specify work sets, or open a detached copy. And so when I pick one of these options, I leave the little button there, the little add desktop shortcut. It doesn't go to the desktop in my case. Is going to also create that shortcut that if you're using shared network drives, anyone on the team can use the same shortcut to perform those same operations. Another great thing that it does is, so the naming scheme is to have _central on the end of the file to identify that as the central file. As it does the create local, it actually, as you can see here, renames the local to remove the word central and replace it with the username. So it's very easy to identify when working in Revit if you actually have the central file open or the username. The normal Revit open feature, you would have A14 _central _Glenn S. Whereas this replaces the word central with the username. So it's very easy. If you can see central anywhere, warning, watch out, you shouldn't be working in the central file directly, you should be working in a local. Reasonably easy to configure this little tool. Wrong spot. It has comes next to it with the little settings ini file. So if I open that, you get the options of where to save your locals, where your projects are located. So I've set this to exactly the spot, but maybe if your projects were on S drive, you just set straight S drive there and browse through the correct project number. You can have the help button going to your own internal help rather than to the blog where it came from. And then to upgrade each version, it's as simple as typing in the new naming scheme there. So when Revit 2015 comes out, you'll copy this little line and say that if A15 is in the central, go and look in Program Files Autodesk Revit 15, and it'll look for revit.exe inside of that folder. So fairly easy to configure this tool to upgrade to new versions. So if you have S14, it's going to open Revit Structure. M14 is going to open Revit MEP. Maybe not such a problem with Revit OneBox, but at least you're not going back to an older version. If you had Revit 13 open last, if you had Revit 14 and you were working on a Revit 13 project, you don't want to be accidentally upgrading that project to the new version. So the tool runs on what's called Auto Hotkey, which is the little AHK file there. And so it does have a compiler with it so that you can actually go in and edit what that's doing as well if you're feeling technical. There is no real support for this tool, so apart from just getting a hold of that guy on the blog. So I would pay to, if you're thinking of implementing this firm-wide, have someone internally that knows a little bit about scripting and might be able to edit some of these options in here if it is not compatible with the latest version. So yeah, the Revit Create Local tool, great little tool. Again, easy to detach and easy to either open the local straight up with the previous work sets or specify which work sets to open. Okay, tip number 3 is something, again, if you already knew this, it won't be news to you. If you didn't know this, you might fall off your chair. When working in a central file, or working with links, with Revit links, I've got a very simple linked Revit model here called Link with some furniture in it. But as you know, I cannot open up this linked model in the same Revit session because it will unload it from the host file. But it is possible to copy furniture objects directly from the link into the host file by simply tabbing through to the object in the link and using the copy to clipboard. And then you can paste a line to the same place, and you've just moved or copied that object from the linked file into your host file. Again, if you knew that, you're probably thinking, duh, but if you didn't know that, that makes it a lot easier to transfer information from a linked file into your host file, and it's just as easy as tabbing through and using the copy to clipboard tool. Small tip, but a good one. The next tip is on shared coordinates setup. So this is something that is I have seen done wrong in the past, and once a project's been set up incorrectly, it's a bit of a pain, especially if it's been shared within consultant teams, to go back and retrospectively fix it up. So I finally started my wee blog here, and it's got one post, which is the shared coordinate setup. So it's done in 6 steps here, which is fairly easy, and then there's 2 steps at the end, which are just for checking what you've done. So you can find this ultrabim.blogspot.com.au, and yes, that was the only URL available with BIM in it. All the rest have been taken. So shared coordinate setup. I'm going to quickly run through it, but again, you can whip back to the blog there to get a better idea and run through this slowly next time you start a project. So to kick off, so there's a few definitions there. So survey point being the WCS point in the AutoCAD survey that you may have received, usually based quite far from the origin point, quite far from the project, 5 kilometres, 10 kilometres away, and that can cause quite large issues. Obviously, you can't import that into Revit. 5 kilometres away, it's going to try and do centre-to-centre placement. But in AutoCAD as well, there can be errors with accuracy. There's a little link there that explains more about that. So that's why a project base point is established closer to the site, and that's used as the project base point in Revit and can be used in AutoCAD also. Project north is, so true north is straight up in the real world. Project north is just so that your building is aligned with the sheet. So it's simply so that you don't have to rotate your view on sheet every time. You just align your grid lines, say, with the way that you want it to display on the sheet. So I'm not going to go through all the notes, but so to open the survey file received. So as you can see there in the little example, that zoomed right out. There's a large distance between the site and the origin point. So first thing is just to choose where you're going to use your project base point. Usually bottom left of the site is fine. It's a virtual point. It doesn't need to be a marker on site. And then project north, in this case, it's going to be square with the 2 boundaries there. Next is to get the X and Y coordinates. This little example is just doing a 2D survey, which is quite common. But obviously with 3D topography, there would be the extra step of the Z-axis. So that point, you can use the ID command within AutoCAD or place a point and then view the properties of that to get the values. And you need to, at this stage, know what units the survey is done in. Generally will be meters, but it pays to check that. So what you can do there is dimension a road. If it's 10, it's likely to be 10 meters rather than 10 millimeters. So you can fairly assume that the file's in meters. And double check in the units command, set the file 2 meters, make sure double check that it is. So yeah, we get the values there if they're in meters. That's fine. We copy the X, and then in the next step we open our actual Revit file. So in the Revit file we go to a floor plan and double check that the project base point and survey point are visible in the view settings. And in the north-south we paste the Y value. And again, if it was in meters in your DWG file, you need to follow that with the M. So 5429 blah 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 M, which is going to be 5.4 Ks. And then the X, again, X is pasted into east-west, and elevation, if you've got that also. Sorry, probably leave elevation at 0 for your project, a project base point. So there's a few notes there, a few little handy tips. So then link the CAD survey into Revit via shared coordinates. So when you do auto by shared coordinates, after pasting those values into the project base point, it's going to give you this warning that the project and the linked file do not share the same coordinates, but then it's going to use the link's world coordinates to the project's shared coordinates, which is perfect. So it then takes in, moves your survey into the correct spot so that the project base point that you've chosen in AutoCAD comes in exactly on top of the project base point there in Revit. So that's great. Next step is to rotate project north. So in the Manage Position tab, you align it. If there's nothing in the file, you might have to draw a line that you know is going to be straight up and down on the project, or you could have something in AutoCAD like a boundary that you can click onto. Always good best practice to name that shared site. If it's a single building, you may just be able to get away with calling it survey point there in the managed location area. And that's done really. So those 6 steps. The next 2 steps are a checking phase, which is always best to check what you've done, make sure that it's going to work for any consultants you may have in AutoCAD, and also double check the positionings for other Revit consultants also. So to double check, you can export a DWG, make sure that it's set to project internal under the units and coordinates of your DWG exporter. And then in AutoCAD, if you open up the original, open up the exported file and XREF the original survey over the top at, it's put a UCS in there in the newly exported file called Revit 60, in this case survey base point, survey point, you may just be able to see that there. And those 2 surveys should come in exactly on top of each other. So that's the way that you know that it has all been set up correctly. You can then export via shared coordinates or project coordinates from Revit. And this file, so I've got a little note down the bottom here. If you're working with consultants that aren't used to working with a project base point, you can send them this little note, and replacing the blanks there with your project name and whatever you've called the DWG file. And this can be sent out, this file gets sent out to any other consultants in Revit, and they use the Acquire Coordinates tool to set up the shared coordinates between the 2 files. So on the tips side of that, a few things to note is that when you're working with the project base point, it does have a bug. So here in my Revit project, it's going to turn on the 2 points there. So the round one being the project base point. If I was to move that around, you may expect that when I next export a DWG, that the WCS, the world coordinates point, would have moved to this location, which would make sense, but it's actually bugged, and it will still use the original point here, not the survey point, but wherever it happened to be. So even if I move the survey off, it's still going to use that point right there. At any stage, you can click the project base point and say move to startup location, and that startup location is always where the WCS 00 point is going to be when you export with project internal coordinates when you're doing a DWG. So they still haven't fixed that. It's been broken since Revit has been out. So the best practice is just not to move that project base point. If you do find that it's been moved, you may as well move it to startup location for the sake of your sanity when working with consultants still in AutoCAD. They're going to get you're going to know at least where that base point is. Next little tip on that lot was with linking CAD files in. It is when you link an AutoCAD file into your Revit model, you're going to get a bunch of imported styles come along with it. All of those layers and line types and junk that's in the AutoCAD file are going to come into your Revit model and really mess things up. So best practice is actually to have an intermediary file for cleanup. So to link your CAD file into link your DWG into a CAD Revit model that only has CAD links in it, and then link that CAD Revit model into your main Revit documentation model. So that ensures that you don't get all of the line styles and patterns and things imported with your from import ones. So yep, there's a few in here, nasty, these ones. So if you use an intermediary file and then XREF that into your main Revit model, link Revit that into your main Revit model, you're not going to get these imported styles coming through. Next tip is a very quick one. Break things up. Again, you may know this, but it's using the guide grid. So on Sheets, there is this little tool, highly underutilized, called guide grid. So what that enables you to do is set up a grid on your sheet there that you can align all of your plans across multiple views. So I've just activated there. It's come in with grids at 25 mil. I'll throw that up to something large, 500. That's a bit more like it. So that's just the spacing. You can narrow this down and make it smaller. You can't align, I don't think, but you can use the move command to move that onto the top left grid. And then when you come to your next sheet, plan level 2, you are able to throw that on there. Activate that same guide grid on this sheet to make sure that you get things lined up nicely. So that's just called guide grid 1. I can have as many as I need, floor plans and elevation ones and whatever. If I throw on the same guide grid, that's nicely lined up. I can then move the view relative to the other so that they are exactly in line. If you're flicking through a multi-page PDF in a presentation, you're not going to get the plan jumping around all over the sheet, and it's just nice to have things nicely lined up, and that little built-in tool is going to enable that. Next wee tip is on glazing schedules. So in Revit we have the wonderful Legend tool to create graphical door schedules and potentially window schedules, but you are not able to place a curtain wall onto that Legend. So we work around to be able to schedule curtain walls in Revit. There are a few, but my advice is to use the little workflow with dummy elevations. So just setting up multiple little elevations throughout the project, looking at each of the curtain walls. They can be brought down in size so that they're only viewing the actual wall itself. You probably don't want those showing up on your main documentation set. So you can use a few different methods, but you can use either a filter, you can have it a new elevation type called curtain elevation there. You can use the hide at scales coarser than, so you can say anything at coarser than 1 to 2, those elevations don't show up, to get rid of them off your GA plans. But yeah, these little elevations, you can go to elevation view there and set up a view template maybe that's going to hide everything except curtain panels, curtain wall mullions, and you do in fact need to have walls shown on. So a curtain wall actually is a wall in Revit. If I get rid of that, we're not going to see much. So you will have other walls or other wall types showing up. You may need to set up a view template for these as well and filter out the other wall types that you don't need. So next wee tip regards exporting DWGs for consultants. So when there are consultants working in AutoCAD, or if you have a requirement to export CAD files maybe at the end of the project, this tip relates to the number of CAD files you export. So I've seen it done in the past where there's a DWG file produced for every single plan. So a GA floor plan, DWG, a furniture plan, a finishes plan, DWG files, one for each. And so that creates a bit of extra overhead dealing with issuing and versioning on more files, especially if you're using an electronic document management system. So when working with consultants, it's always best for yourself to minimize the number of files that you're sending out. So I recommend setting up export views. So in the export view, it will have maybe different settings to your GA floor plan or your furniture plan. You will go ahead and show all objects on that plan. So show as much as you can, as much as necessary, to combine the floor finishes and the furniture plan if needed, and the GA plan all into one. So that's nice. The next thing that you can include in that single plan is actually the slab plan. If you were required to output a DWG of the floor slabs, you can go ahead and switch that over to a wireframe view and make sure that your view settings are set correctly for the for the view range. Make sure it's below the floor slab. And then you will be able to see straight through the walls and see the outline of the floor slab. And if your translator is set up correctly, you'll have that layer coming out onto the floor slab, concrete floor layer in AutoCAD. So you actually get that information as well by flicking over onto wireframe. So hopefully you can avoid exporting a separate DWG just for your slab plan. Again, when it comes to the reflected ceiling plan, that would normally also be a separate DWG that needs to go out. But you can go ahead and show an underlay on this plan. So here I'm looking at level 1. If I put the level 1 reflected ceiling plan as an underlay, then my export DWG is also going to export the ceiling all in one. So we've got the floor slabs, you've got the ceiling, you've got the walls, you've got the furniture. So this is good that it means that you're only sending out one file. There's no chance of the slab DWG being out of sync with the GA DWG that you've sent out. So you're sending just the one file with all of the information in it. It does put the onus on the consultant or the other party to do a bit of layer management so they can see the layers that they want to see. So again, using DWG translators, you can get some pretty good consistency out of Revit. So once they set up those layer states once, they shouldn't be having to go back and play around too much. Just a little note on that. When using linked files, when linking other files in, the underlay reflected ceiling plan doesn't work. It doesn't export, so or show up even. So here in this linked file called link, I do in fact have a ceiling modeled, but so if I turn on to my ceiling plan, you can see that in the linked model there is a, in the linked model there's a ceiling modeled, which we can see on the ceiling plan. But just when you use the underlay feature, which I have in this export plan, if you use the underlay feature to show the level 1, the linked elements in the underlay won't show up. So you may end up having to have a separate plan there of the actual ceiling plan, duplicate that one, call it export, and have, if you're using linked models, have an export floor and an export ceiling. So that's two DWGs rather than, you know, up to 7 or 5, I suppose. So it's still going to save you a fair bit of time there. The next tip relates to a problem in Revit when you are tagging elements across linked files. So quickly show, I've got a video, but if I am in this file and I am tagging this furniture across, I don't have a tag loaded, across the linked file, this bug is something that you need to be aware of. Go to my little tips here, and I'll follow along with this video. Turn off the old sound there. So what I've got there set up on screen is 4 Revit sessions to emulate a work sharing environment. So it was hard to do a screen recording across 2 computers. So this is the top 2 Revit sessions are set up as user 1. The bottom 2 Revit sessions are set up as user 2. And it's a pretty typical workflow on large projects that you need to tag an element that's in a linked file. So on very large projects, we've had a situation where we've got geometry files, and then the sheets themselves are in a separate file. So in that case, all of the geometry is being tagged across a linked file. So that's particularly bad. So I'll be referring to it as the geometry file. So user 1's got a geometry file. User 1's also got the sheet file open. User 2 here has the same geometry file, and then also has the sheets file open. So the issue occurs when user 1 here is creating some new geometry. So he goes in and he's going to copy his toilet over, create something new, which I hope we're all doing every day. And then he does a save to central, and then in his other Revit session he reloads the link to bring those elements across. So in the sheets file here, he goes ahead, manage, and reloads his links. He gets the new geometry show up. He then tags that geometry as plumbing fixture 1 and 2. Brilliant. So then the issue occurs when user 2 down the bottom, without doing a reload, goes straight ahead and, oh sorry, I forgot to, if we go back up, and user 2 does, user 1 does a reload, save to central, get off the top, Glenn, what we're doing. Here we go, saves to central, as he should have. Then user 2 goes ahead and does a save to central without reloading those links. What happens is he gets the tags loaded in, but they haven't got any host geometry yet because he hasn't done a reload. So that's really quite nasty. So those tags are now not hosted. They've lost their host because the geometry is not there in the background. Even after he finally does a reload and gets the geometry, those tags are not going to rehost automatically. Sometimes there's a little nudge technique that you can do with the number pad to get those tags to rehost, but in this case that's not going to work. They're completely gone. And then even worse than that, when he does finally get around to doing a save to central, user 2 saves to central. Next time poor old user 1 does a save to central, all his tags have lost their host also. So it just spreads from there, and then all of a sudden you've got 50 tags without hosts, and all of those elements need to be done again, tagged again. So that's not good. So that's a problem in Revit that still exists in 2014 and all the versions that I've tried it in. And so the correct workflow is now being demonstrated. So for user 1 there, he is creating new geometry, saving to central. He then in his sheets file, as before, reloads the link to get the geometry to show up. New geometry, tags that geometry, and then saves to central, which yes, I did remember to do this time. Then user 2, before he does a save to central, simple as reloading links. So he goes to manage, he reloads, gets the new geometry, then saves to central, and the tag shows up and hosts to that geometry. So can be quite a major issue when you're working on large projects with multiple users and using linked files, which is probably all large projects. There is no official fix yet. It would be quite nice to have some sort of API or something written. If anyone's an API wizard out there and wants to write something, it'd be much appreciated. But it's in there as a wish list to get that sorted. So for now though, the rule to ensure this does not happen is when working in a file that has linked geometry tagged, you must reload those links before saving to central. So every time, if you're in a Sheets file in this case, you need to do a reload links of any linked files, then perform a save to central to ensure that those tags aren't dropping off. So yeah, that can be a big problem. We've had that problem before. Finally got to the bottom of what was happening, so now just sharing the love. Last couple here that I'm going to get through are small ones. So when working on a very large project, it can be a bit intimidating to hit the 3D view button there. So that's going to do the default 3D view, and if that is viewing the entire project, that can take a long time to load on a large project. This is sort of medium size, so it's fine. So obviously we use the section box tool to cut down the size of that that view, but to manually activate the section box and drag down all 6, sides is going to be a real pain. So what you can do, well, there's two. If you didn't know, you can right-click the view cube there and orient to a view, and then orient to one of the views that's been saved in the project. So that's quite nice. It's going to automatically chop that section box up and make it look like whatever that section view looked like. You can do floor plans and everything as well. So that was on the right click, orient to view. If you don't happen to have a view set up of the area that you are working with, from the floor plan, you can come in with the floor plan active. You can come into the 3D views and right click and say show section box. So from the plan, you can actually eliminate a lot of that mucking around before you even go into the section. If it's just this room that I want to see in plan mode where I can clearly see my walls and line things up accurately, I can bring the section box down, then hit the 3D view, and the view is of just that one room. I then do the height. So that's a bit of a goodie. What have I done there? Come down. So that's, yeah, you can do the section box, all 4 sides, before flipping into the 3D view, and then you're not waiting around for it to load the entire 3D model and potentially crashing. Last tip, 10 past, so a little bit of time for questions. Start throwing those questions into the chat box now, if you have any. Last tip is for when working with MEP, guys using Revit MEP. And tip for any other consultants working with them and for MEP guys themselves. In Revit, particularly even in Revit One Box, quite common practice to disable the systems feature. If you're an architectural firm, you only get architecture and a few of the structure tools. It's quite a common practice to disable the systems tab. And obviously in Revit architecture itself, you don't have those options. And inside of the systems area, there are the specialized system color schemes. So these are great if you're an MEP engineer. You can use those to color all of the, say, pipes in a certain color scheme, which is just fantastic. Unfortunately, if you are working with architects or structure that do not have the systems activated in their Revit, there's no way for them to edit those color schemes so that the pipes aren't blue and the ducts aren't green and things like that. So when you link the hydraulic model into your Revit here, there's no way you can have control over those colors unless you have a version of Revit with systems enabled, and then you can come in and change the system color schemes. So these are quite often done per firm with specialist color schemes, and firms have set them up the way that they want them to be. So it would be very nice if as you're exporting from Revit MEP or any of the systems guys, if you could go ahead and get those color schemes and set them back to black. So set all of the colors that you have in your own documentation back to black as you're exporting the Revit model for other consultants. There is a way that it can be done from the architectural. If they have systems enabled, they can open up your file, edit the color schemes, change them all to black, save that as a template file, and then load that template file into their own project each time they receive a new file. But yeah, if it was just done as a part of the export process on the MEP side, then there wouldn't be any of those issues, and that would be just fantastic. So I could go on all day, but I won't. I'm going to leave it at that, and that was 10 tips there. If anyone's got any questions about any of that, go ahead and pop them in the chat box or the question box there. That blog again, so the original for the Augie Create Local was Do You Revit, but that hasn't been updated in a fair while, and I think the latest version they had available was 2011, Revit 2011. So I've made a few tweaks on it, and I'll throw that up on my blog, I guess. So that was ultrabim.blogspot.com.au. So I'll throw that up as a post soon, and make that zip file available for download for the Create Local tools. I'll get a few other handy things up there, a few other workflows and things listed up on this blog as well. So I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for attending. This webinar has been recorded, so it will go up there on our website, the A2K website, under Webinar Archive. So on the main page there's the Events Webinar Archive. You'll be able to see this blog, this webinar up there as a video probably in a couple of days. Oh, hang on, we do have a couple of questions here. Sorry, these questions were in the questions area, not the chat area. Here we go. I've got some questions. Someone didn't see the first tip. Wow, you missed a goodie. I did. All I did was switch the settings over. So when working in a work sharing project, I went to the options there and changed the save to central, left the save to central on half an hour, but put the save local at 1 hour so that it's at a longer interval. So I can go cancel here, and so that way I'm only going to get bugged once with the little error message, with the little save to central reminder there. So as you may know, in the default save to central settings, there is the tick box is on for save a local file before and after syncing with central. So as you do that save to central, it does a save local anyway. So you don't need to be bugged twice with little reminders asking you to save to central. And then about save local file, I'm not sure if that was the tip that you missed or if you missed the actual tip on the Augie local file creator, which was this little tool. If you missed that one, maybe check out the Do You Revit blog, or also my blog, and I'll try and get it up there, and it just explains what the tool does. I'll try and get the updated version on my UltraBIM blog shortly. And here we go, a question about modeling post-tensioning in Revit. Yeah, I am the architectural guy, so you may know more about that than me. Yeah, so I'm probably not going to be much help there. But go ahead and, if you're with A2K, throw in a question to one of our support guys and through the help desk there, and they'll be able to help you out with that. But that's all the questions. Yeah, thank you very much.